Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Finovate podcast. This is Greg Palmer. Finovate Europe is going to kick off next week, and one of the pieces that I'm really excited about, I'll be interviewing our own analyst David Penn on stage, and we'll be recording that for the podcast as well. But we're going to talk about where FinTech goes in the next 10 years. I thought it was a really interesting topic for conversation, and I wanted to get a different perspective and air that just to kind of prime the pump a little bit and get people thinking about it. So joining me on the show today, we have Steven Ramirez of Beyond the Arc, and we're going to get his thoughts on where FinTech is going in the next 10 years. Let's go ahead and jump now to that interview. Joining me on the podcast today, we have Steven Ramirez, CEO of Beyond the Arc. Steven has done a lot of work for us at Finovate over the years. You may have seen him being interviewed or interviewing other people at our shows. Steven, welcome to the podcast. A pleasure having you.
Hey, Greg. Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You're very welcome. So for people who haven't heard of you or know about your work, can you give us a little background on who you are and where your perspective on the FinTech ecosystem comes from?
Greg, are there people that haven't heard of me? My God.
I know. I mean, maybe the 3 or 4 out there, just to have our bases covered.
No, I just couldn't resist. I'm the CEO of Beyond the Arc. We're focused on helping organizations transform their customer experience. So it really is making things better for customers. And we do that in 2 primary ways. One is we help companies become more data-driven. And so that's an application of data science. And we also help them to transform their customer focus through communications. So we have a content practice. And so in those 2 areas, we help organizations, particularly financial services, make a difference for customers.
Yeah, and I think it's been fun to watch the work that you have done. Obviously, you've had a really good view of FinTech over the last couple of years. And what we want to talk about today is kind of this big picture question, where is FinTech going? So the last decade has been amazing for FinTech. It's exploded in an amazing way. And where we are now is so crazy different from where we were in 2010. It really seems impossible that anyone in 2010 could have predicted how things would unfold. Now that we've established the impossibility of getting this question right, let's talk about what the next decade of FinTech will hold. I think, to give ourselves the best chance, let's kind of start with where we are right now and work forward, and that should give us a good shot. What do you see as kind of the big levers that are shaping FinTech right now?
All right, so Greg, I have to say, a lot of my interest and kind of a fascination with FinTech has been shaped by Finovate. So I remember, going to Finovate 10 years ago, and the big thing was, hey, we're going to take these things that happen on your desktop and we're going to put them on mobile, right? And so everything was about being able to have the right mobile app. And I think that we've seen this amazing, transformation that just making it available on a platform, just having a technology isn't enough. And I think that one of the things that's shaping FinTech is this real focus on delivering real value versus focusing on technology. The technology, particularly I think the last couple of years, seems to become less prominent as more of a focus on the customer experience, sort of takes prominence. That's I think what I see. I mean, are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think you're spot on. 10 years ago, we're going to put it on a mobile app. And then you have, obviously, even at that point, the skeptics saying people won't want to bank on their phone. That's craziness. But to see how it's evolved from there, I think you're exactly right that I think the kind of importance of the customer is going to be even more important over the next couple of years as people now look and say, okay, here's all the things we can do. We're technologically able to do these things. What do people actually want us to do? And so, obviously the customer is going to be a really major role there. But what kind of big forces do you see coming in the near future that's going to shape the market, that's going to be different from where we've been in the last couple of years?
Well, I think that, the other kind of countervailing force, in addition to this focus on the customer is, of course, just the growing sophistication of the fraudsters and how much at risk, various systems are. And so I think that there's always been this sort of this push-pull between kind of like the making it easy for the customers and being able to have the right, discipline around security and compliance. So that I think is kind of the the backdrop. But I think that with those kind of as foundations, but I think that there's a couple of areas where that to make it easier for customers, the two things are really going to transform that. I think that first of all, we're going to see this transformation around payments really being everywhere. Like payments are going, like that is, it's good. FinTech is going to be about payments. It perhaps already is, but it's going to be
maybe
even
it already
more
was.
so. And I think the other thing is that the power from new technologies like 5G are going to totally revolutionize FinTech. So I think that payments everywhere and 5G are really the forces that we can expect are going to shape the future of FinTech here.
You know, it's interesting because the second you say the rollout of 5G, it kind of instantly clicks in my brain. Like, yes, that's going to be something that's huge. It's actually not one that I was thinking about before. I think we get kind of bogged down in these discussions of AI and machine learning. We talk about, blockchain or big data, but 5G is one that you don't hear people actually talking about that much. But there are some really transformative properties there that could come through from that, and really giving people the individual computational power that right now only exists in kind of big data warehouses in remote places or up in the cloud.
Yeah, and I think that that's it. It's basically taking the power of the data center, the supercomputer, and bringing it to your what I would say is your phone, but it's actually really your personal computing device.
Right.
And that is, and it's just the ability to make those decisions much more powerfully in real time with more data. And not just decisions, but also experiences that you'll be able to actually deliver, from 3D, from 3D visualizations to augmented reality. All of this becomes more and more possible with the kind of speed and performance that 5G offers.
I think that's really astute. And obviously there's kind of a really interesting carrot that you're dangling there, this idea of what we can do with it. But what types of companies do you think will be able to navigate that change successfully? Or maybe a different way, how do you think companies should be preparing for that?
Well, I could tell you that the leading tech companies, Amazon, Google, Apple, they are definitely focused in this area and trying to figure out how do they leverage this technology. I think in financial services, these are questions that have, frankly, not even been asked. And so I think that the forward-looking financial services players are going to start looking at that question and understanding what implications, that's where we are in financial services, is what implications might this have? And I'm just trying to sort of prompt that question so there's more discussion about it in the industry.
I think it's a good thing, anytime you have people discussing it. And of course, we're going to have the same, that's not going to impact financial services. There's going to be that same faction within the financial industry, which has been one of the biggest consistencies in FinTech since I've been paying attention. This group of people who think, you don't need to worry about that. It's not going to affect financial services. And from my perspective, that group has been wrong pretty much every step of the way. But I think it will be interesting to see what kind of response we get for this new one. And I think you're right. People need to be thinking about it. So if you're a FinTech company, you need to already be looking up the stream and saying, how are we going to engage with this? If you're a bank, you need to be looking and saying, how is this going to change customer expectations and what we need to do on our side? So I think you're right. Talking about it is a good first step. And really, I think obviously just learning about it, exploring it, and understanding what that really means, what it will allow you to do is probably a good first step as well. And to your point, we'll probably start to see companies at Finovate rolling out new plays that come off of this 5G technology before too long. So coming back to the setup of the first question, the biggest, how impossible it is to predict 10 years in the future. Let's look backwards. What was the thing that you think really surprised you in the past decade? What didn't you see coming at all? In 2010, what came out that you just could not have predicted?
I think that honestly, the thing that I'm most shocked at is just, I would say, sort of fraud everywhere. Just how good the fraudsters have gotten, and honestly, that's the thing that sort of is the biggest kind of break on this technology is the fact that it can be exploited in so many ways. So I think that while there's tremendous opportunity, actually, the thing that I'm sort of most surprised about is just how rigorous the kind of the pushback has been from on the fraudster side, which is kind of honestly sort of puts a little bit of a different view on this future technology. It's like for all the sort of positive things that we kind of plan for, there's a little bit of just not getting too carried away until we make sure that it really is kind of appropriate for the banking environment.
Right. Well, security has always been one of the biggest factors. And I think you're right with how much it's exploded or how much fraud has exploded. And I think, especially when you look at some of these major hacks that have gone on, and it feels like as a consumer, you really can't safeguard your data, right? There's just too many people who have access to it. You could be buying something on Target on a Saturday morning and have your information stolen, or, a major credit bureau can have a breach that all of a sudden releases massive amounts of information. So that's certainly been a surprise. I think that the fraud community probably didn't see it as a surprise. They probably looked at it as a woohoo. Okay, so now here's. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say we're coming up on the end of our time, so I want to end with the most impossible question out there, and I'm going to really put you on the spot here. What do you think is going to surprise everybody in the next 10 years? We're looking for a bold prediction here. No hedging. Let's really hear it from you, Steve.
Oh, is it? So I can't say payments will be important.
Right. No, you got to go beyond that. Yeah, that's not a surprise to anybody. Come on. What's out of the blue? This is the bold prediction. There's literally nothing on the line here, by the way. I think the out of the blue prediction is with all this technology, the actual devices themselves go away. You're not going to actually need to carry a cell phone. You're not going to have to have a device. There's going to be latent devices everywhere. So you'll just be able to speak. And that system is sort of like Alexa everywhere or Siri everywhere. And so you'll be able to access fully all of your information at all times through voice activation without it being your own personal device. Wow, I asked for a bold prediction and I got one. That's quite a good one. So the future that you're kind of imagining is like I would walk, maybe this is kind of like the Amazon store, right? Like I walk in, I just grab some stuff and then I go. I don't need to actually have anything on my person. My person becomes my wallet, basically. Yeah, you're the best. You're walking biometric, right? Going back to that authentication, biometrics are the most powerful in terms of being able to identify people. And I think the Amazon Go store is a great example. Yes, you just walk right in, or you speak to Siri, and Siri can tell from the tone, the inclinations in your voice, and the rate at which you speak, and all those other biometric indicators. It's able to know that it is you, and this goes back to the power of 5G. No, I think you're right. Well, and obviously there's the fraud component as well, right? Once you kind of marry that the deviceless type of future, how does that impact fraudsters? Are they going to end up, where's the future of fraud? There's a whole other conversation we could have there, which is getting more scary and more sci-fi by the moment. But no, this has been really interesting, Steven. I appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts. I know it's a difficult one. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to publish this, obviously, but we're going to put it into a time capsule. We'll dust it off in 2030 and then make sure that I tweet it out, or however we're disseminating information 10 years from now, and we'll see how closely you got. Thank you very much for joining me and playing the game. Great. Thanks a lot, Greg. It is always a pleasure chatting with Steven. I think we could talk for quite a bit longer, particularly given some of the pieces that we pulled up there in that conversation. I like the idea that he really focused on about 5G and the way that's going to really change financial services. I think he's right, and that's an area that you really don't hear a lot of people talking about. If you are in the fintech space, you need to be taking a look at how that could affect your business, how that could affect your customers, and obviously the ever-present threat of fraudsters is something else that we need to keep an eye on, particularly as we get more and more technologically advanced in what we can do. We need to make sure that we are being really safe in how we do that and not exposing people to unnecessary risk. It's a very delicate balance. It's going to be fascinating to watch this continue to unfold over the next 10 years. And I think we'll get Steven back on the show before too long to talk a little bit more about some of the more specific pieces that he sees from his angle in the fintech industry as well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and listening, and catch us at Finovate Europe next week. If you're in Berlin, it is not too late to register. Remember, the code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% off on your ticket. See you next week.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@Finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.